All right, hey guys, Justin here, coming to you from a new location here at my desk in Upper Doggy Fort. Today's video, I'm going to be showing you some of the plans we've been creating and kind of how we've been developing our plan set, both how we've done it in the past and how we're kind of working on them now. Hopefully, we'll be done soon. But basically, today's video, I'm going to kind of cover the difference between using an architect or an engineer to draw your plans versus doing it yourself, as we have been doing. So if you're curious about, hey, how do you build a house and make sure it's not going to fall over? Well, stay tuned. All of that is in today's episode. I'm Justin.
And I'm Sharon.
Over the last couple years, we've been working hard on cleaning up our brushy, overgrown property in the Sierra foothills, while at the same time excavating, breaking rocks, and clearing a building pad. Now, we've started laying out and planning our dream home. So stay tuned, follow our progress as we share all the details from our ultimate DIY project. Alright, so before we talk about our current plan set and how we were intending to develop that, let's go back in time a little ways and look at the big house we built in Colorado and talk about how we developed those. So, the house we built there was pretty big. It was extensive. It had a lot of corners. It had a lot of complicated roof lines. And so people would often ask us, "Oh, who was the architect for this house?" And in fact, there was no architect of record for that house. We actually did all of the design and planning of it pretty much ourselves. So if you look at this floor plan, this is actually something that Sharon created back when we first got started. We were working with a drafter to help with the construction documents, but in order to kind of get the exact floor plan we wanted, we ended up kind of creating it really on our own so that we could get the layout kind of exactly how we want and communicate how we wanted all the rooms to be size-wise and ceiling heights and so forth. So for the most part, we started out with this. We didn't have the software to draw it, but Sharon used, I think, Visio actually to create this initial drawing. And we took that and gave it to the drafter, and he created this set of construction documents that you see here. So these plans done by the drafter have all the details that you'd need to actually build the building. So you can see everything's dimensioned, the window and door placements are accurate with their relative heights from the floors. All those kind of details have to be kind of drawn up and included in the plans. It also has the kind of construction level details that you can see on this page, which show, in this example, the actual roof framing layout. So this is how the trusses are going to lay out, how the headers are sized, how the shear walls are to be constructed. So it's a lot of work, and all those details were again done by the drafter that started with our floor plan. All right, so you're probably thinking, all right, it's so easy. All I got to do is scribble some plans on a napkin and take it to a drafter, and they'll take care of all these details for me. And that's mostly true. We'll get into some more details on that in a minute. But there are some other steps we had to do as well, starting with a soils report. So a soils report is common to get when you're actually going to buy the property. It has a lot of details about the soil, like really just its characteristics. And what they do is come out, drill a hole, take some samples back to a lab, and kind of analyze what the soil consists of, the types, and that information feeds into some things that may be important to you depending on your property. For example, if you're going to have a septic system, it will kind of inform how involved your septic system may or may not need to be, as well as foundation engineering. So if you're going to build a foundation, you need to know something about the soil in order to kind of design and build it properly. And then the same engineering firm that did the soils report also did the foundation engineering for our big house we built. So this was something we knew would be required to build there in Colorado, since most of the houses there have pretty extensive foundations due to having a basement. So in our case, many of the concrete walls were 9-10 feet high in some places, I think. And so if you're going to build a foundation wall that high, you need to make sure it's engineered properly so that you can not have issues with too much pressure on the walls from the dirt, how to deal with the water, Lots of things like that that are pretty important. Obviously, it's the foundation. You want to get that right. So the foundation engineering was done by the firm, and that was all part of our submittal package for the county. Okay, so for the house we built there in Colorado, there was ended up being one other thing we needed the engineers' help with, and that had to do with wind loading. So if you're going to build a house, you want to make sure that if a 100-year wind kicks up, it's not going to tip it over or crack the drywall or basically cause the structure to deflect too much than it should. So the options for making sure that doesn't happen are: one, you can follow a prescriptive path. So the code kind of dictates certain building techniques and essentially rules you can follow to sort of be sure that that won't happen. However, it's pretty restrictive. For example, it will dictate the size of windows and doors, how close you can place them to a corner of the building, how many of them can be on a particular wall. And one of the big things is the wall heights too. So if you're going to have walls over 10 feet high, then you just can't follow a prescriptive path because they've not done the calculations that way. And in our case, with the house there was lots of walls where they were definitely over 10 feet. So we were basically not able to submit a set of plans and have it kind of be completely prescriptive. So we had to have the engineers develop a shear wall schedule to basically analyze the structure and figure out the wind loads on it, and then determine a way to build it essentially that will allow it to be strong enough. At the end of the day, really what they produced is a shear wall schedule that was included in the plan set, and that just kind of details the nailing pattern, the size or the thickness of the sheathing to use, how to nail it, how often to nail it, size of nails. Basically, those details uh, were kind of what's required to make sure that we have enough lateral or shear strength for the structure. Okay, so wrapping up part one here, thinking back, I guess what's the summary of what we did there in Colorado? Well, essentially, there was no architect of record, as I mentioned. There was nobody that went and stamped every page of the plan set and said, I'm a licensed professional and I approve this design. So, really, what we did was kind of a combination, right? We had some elements that followed a prescriptive path. That's how for example, the drafter calculated the headers and so forth. But there were some elements that we did have to have some engineering help with in order to kind of make sure that the structure is adequate for the conditions there in Colorado. And a lot of this has to do with really what the local county will let you do. So in our particular regional building department, having a plan set that was a combination of both was acceptable to them. So there were, as I mentioned, some engineering pages that were done for the foundation. They stamped those, but the rest of the plan set was not. And so essentially, we tried to follow that same recipe here in California for building the house that we're planning next. It didn't quite go according to plan, so I will get into those details with what we've been doing in part two. So anyway, hopefully this was interesting how we built our big house there. Next up, we'll get a little closer in time with what we've been working on for the current house plan.